EEG is an old method, a humble method, and it remains the only way to measure brain activity non-invasively in real time in a human being. And it's particularly good at measuring brain dynamics. So these moment-to-moment changes in brain activity that ultimately we can map onto psychological processes and behavior and psychiatric illnesses, which is what we study in my lab. We use EEG to measure what I call intermediate phenotypes. So these are processes that are right in the middle of, say, illness development. So these are brain processes, brain dynamics that we could map onto more distal upstream risk factors for illness, things like genetic vulnerability, things like environmental exposures to toxic substances, those things early in life that might influence brain development and brain functioning. Then we can measure brain development and brain functioning, and then we can in turn map those things onto more downstream clinical outcomes, the emergence of symptoms, the beginning of an illness, or even the long-term course of an illness, how the illness waxes and wanes or recurs over time. The EEG assessment process involves fitting a participant for a cap. The cap is kind of like a swim cap. It's meant to fit pretty snugly all around the head, and then what we can do there is attach electrodes that cover the scalp, and those electrodes measure voltage right at the scalp. And what that voltage represents are the electrical fields in your brain as bundles of neurons have coordinated activity together. So we're not measuring from the neurons directly, but we're getting as close as we can by measuring from the scalp. And from that, we can directly measure ongoing brain activity in real time. EEG is a powerful tool that allows us to measure processes that we would not be able to measure any other way. What makes this a powerful method is that we can use EEG to measure some of these subtle differences in brain activity that predict who goes on to develop depression. So we're studying folks who do not yet have any symptoms. They're not depressed, they're fine, they're healthy, but these are folks who might go on to develop depression 1-2 years later. We can begin to predict that by leveraging some of the signals that we get from EEG. And that's an example where EEG is being predictive, clinically predictive, telling us about prognosis, those future-oriented things, which clinically this is what patients want to know, right? These are the questions we get asked all the time on the clinical side. And so that's where EEG can help us answer some questions that would be tough to answer any other way.